All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Joe Niemer. I am a researcher here at Cloud Academy. Thank you for joining us on this webinar regarding trends in tech jobs, specifically geographic trends in tech jobs. And this webinar is going to be based around our most recent data report from June 2019. So why don't we get started? We're going to take a look at our agenda first. It's going to be relatively simple. So I'll give you a little bit of a background and an intro, and we can talk about where these jobs are, how they're different in other places, and really what all these effects are. And then at the end, as usual, we can have a few questions, and we'll just take it from there. So to get started, everyone just seems to be asking and contemplating, where are all the jobs in tech? As we know, everything is just, if you're involved in cloud, you're always hearing about how everything is moving so quickly, everything is bleeding edge. So where would you start to find out where these actual new jobs in tech are? So some of the traditional sources in the US, we have the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That is a government agency that actually does quantitative research and looks forward and does predictions on how what jobs there are, and they kind of prognosticate for the future and say over the next 10 years or so, the job growth is expected to be X%, etc. And some other places that people look at are like colleges, because they're kind of, in their own way, they're thought leaders doing research and figuring out ways to help students. Now, Cloud Academy's way is we actually have our own data warehouse. And so a few details about that over here. We've got data scientists, and what they do is they collect upwards of 3,000 job descriptions for a handful of different job roles. And this is based in the United States and in other countries of the world too. And these roles are such ones like cloud architect, DevOps engineer, security engineer, etc. And they even, not only are they looking at the actual roles, but they're looking at the aspects and the skills that are being asked for in each job ad. So a job ad might be asking for AWS or Azure competency, or maybe a full stack dev ad might be asking for someone who's got a .NET background, etc. So it's actually looking for all the details for each role, and then taking that, putting it into a database, trying to get some intelligence around there. So let's jump in. Where and what are these jobs that we're talking about? There are some places that are saying that non-tech companies are the ones that are hiring the most. There was a recent article that you can see online from Quartz at Work. It says some of the biggest tech recruiters are from outside the tech sector. And from looking at the data, we found that is really not quite true yet. Tech is still king for now. You can see right here, this graph right here, this bar chart is actually showing percentage of all tech job ads. This is from the end of May 2019, and this is split up by industry. And you'll see here technology is this largest one, and that is technology software specifically. And that is over 40% of all the job ads are from tech software companies. The nearest second one is professional services right here. So really, tech is double of what the nearest competitor is, which is really a huge margin, something that we're finding right now. So is that the full story? I mean, if we start to think about it and look at it more closely, we don't think it's the full story. Now, you start to take a lot of the other industries in there. Some of the top ones are professional services, like I mentioned earlier. That's about 20% of all the job ads in a week. And healthcare was the next biggest one at 3%, and a bunch of other ones at 2%. But financial services, banks, even tech hardware, so chip makers and stuff. You aggregate all these together, and they come to about 30% of all job ads, which really that's some good trend. It's a trend of increasing prevalence among non-tech companies trying to get tech jobs. I think it's interesting that the biggest of the small ones is healthcare at 3%, and in general, healthcare has been thought of as one of the industries that is relatively future-proof because people actually need to be doing the work. It's not all stuff that can be automated, but there are a lot of uses for technology, whether it's AI around just like biometric devices, or even things as simple as all the technology within a hospital that nurses might need in order to coordinate and communicate with each other. So these hospitals, say these are all, a lot of them are run by these large enterprises. So that's kind of one of the reasons why all this trend is changing, where healthcare, financial services, etc., they are starting to actually have more jobs available in tech. All these enterprises are moving to the cloud. We know there's this digital transformation that we hear a lot about, and it's real. And not just that, all these companies need experienced staff so that they can kind of work through these transitions, through the migrations, and then come up with their plans for all these cloud-first apps or applications and kind of processes as they move forward. In fact, just some proof about how much the cloud is growing. Gartner, who we know as probably the gold standard in analysts, is saying that public cloud service market is really growing at a huge rate. So expected to be about 330 billion in 2022. All right, so let's continue. Now, an interesting thing that we found in the data is that UK tech job trends are indeed different. Now, as you see over here, technology software, that was the big one in the US, is actually second in the UK. So tech is about 28% and professional services are just over 30%. So why is that the case? We think by looking at the data, first of all, in the US, just thinking about the US as its own kind of island of sorts, Silicon Valley has such a huge shadow that it really kind of skews everything. That's where so many of the jobs are, in addition to all the other new hubs, whether it's Seattle, and we say new in quotes because all these places have been here for a while, Seattle, Austin, parts of North Carolina, etc. So we know that all that is skewed in the US. The other thing is, we know that there are a lot of services within the UK, and they do a lot of consulting in around for finance and all sorts of other things. That's basically our hypothesis about why professional services come in even stronger in the UK. So if some of these things are changing, if the hiring landscape has changed, as we have written here, we can start to think about how there's these non-traditional companies that they're competing with the big tech guys for the jobs. And so that is like a different paradigm, a new way that things can be looked at. So is there a new way we can think about what jobs are available to? And we think, sure, we can kind of change our perspective a little bit. Maybe the full stack position is going away, the full stack dev role, because there are so many cloud-centric, cloud-first roles that seem to be getting more and more popular. Now, for sure, we don't think full stack dev role is gone. There's still a need for people who can kind of jump in and with maybe a shorter learning curve than other people start to contribute meaningfully on a variety of different teams on a larger development team. But what our data is showing, if you start to look at these roles here, is that there are more roles available for some of the cloud-centric roles. So some of the traditional ones are like full stack, but some of the more cloud ones are like DevOps, of course, cloud architect, or security engineer. Let's check that out a little bit more. Security engineer, for example. Now these numbers are relative. These are showing within just a number, the subset of security engineer positions, for example, how they're scattered throughout the US. We're seeing, you can see over here, there's a huge emphasis in the general DC area of the United States. So that's that Northern Virginia or Virginia, Maryland, and DC, where that's the government space. Of course, California with Silicon Valley is also huge. But security is now a really huge emphasis in the gov space. We have all sorts of things going on there, such as the huge JEDI contract that Microsoft and Amazon are working on, $10 billion. There is government spaces there that need extra high security, whether it's people to be FedRAMP accredited. And there's a high need for security engineers to actually be contributing to kind of meet these controls and compliance standards. Likewise, data engineer is showing a big emphasis, of course, firstly in Silicon Valley. We could surmise the Silicon Valley based on California, but we see here in New York, and we know that there is obviously Wall Street is over here for a long time. Wall Street has been working on been kind of powered by a lot of big data stuff, and that is still going on. So this is just kind of a small kind of subset, an example of showing you how new roles based on new tech can pay off. So some key takeaways from this. This is the part of the presentation where we have a little bit more words, but let me get to the main stuff. Some stats for you are Silicon Valley, we think, still very powerful. It's got over 42% of all job ads in the US. But there's a definite trend. There's professional services at 20% of all job ads, and then other industries like healthcare, 3%, they are making strides to compete with Silicon Valley. And it's something that's quantifiable, and it is changing over time. And we can also see based on our data that currently jobs such as cloud first ones like security and data engineer, they have about 1.5 to 2 times the number of job ads for those roles. compared to something like a more traditional full stack developer. So that is just kind of more proof and more kind of insight into how the digital transformation really is taking hold everywhere. It needs a lot of workers and a lot of thought power in order to kind of keep on driving it at every stage of the way, planning, day-to-day stuff, etc. So now's the time where we can open up for a few questions that we've been getting. We got one from Merrick, and it says, do you analyze any countries besides the US and the UK? And yes, we do. So for our job roles, we are analyzing currently, and we're expanding, but currently we are analyzing, so the US, Canada, Europe, Israel, Japan, and also Russia, which is Europe. And there are plans to expand more. And then for sure, so that's for job roles in general. And then we also look into kind of start to break down, we get some ancillary data around the popularity of certain, let's say, tech stacks. And that stuff can be mixed up within different countries because we get it from different sources where it's kind of not based on job roles. We might look at just what people are talking about. But we have ways to kind of differentiate that as well based on country and utilizing tags, etc., things like that. We got another question from Caesar. Are these numbers absolute numbers? So in general, the numbers as far as the roles in the bar graph, those are percentages kind of based on absolute numbers. So if there were 100 job ads and 40% of them are from tech companies, yeah, there's 40 of those job ads are from tech companies. The maps that have the big blobs over different parts of the US, those are all relative. So that is in the pool of X numbers of X number of job ads, there are more over here and less over there. And then I think piggybacking on that, we have Jehoon asking, how often is the data updated and can we see it ourselves? So this data generally is updated every 2 weeks, more or less. We have a data scientist, a data science team that works on this, and I and some other people dive into it, do some research on it, and work on these data reports. Now there is data that you can look at yourself. So let's get to that. That is in Cloud Academy's Cloud Catalog. So this is where you can actually work with the data. And why don't I just show you that really quickly? This is the Cloud Academy website. So we can see, let me jump to something you saw already in the presentation. Right here, it's Cloud Job Role Demand by area. So this was what some of our graphs are based off of. So we can see, for example, this data is from mid-June. And let's look at security engineer. You can see, you zoom in a little bit here in the DC area. In mid-June, in 2 weeks of mid-June, Virginia had a -3% change month over month. DC -11, and Maryland +7% change month over month. So this is these are fun graphs to work with at different roles as well. And I can show you what else is here, for example, based on the job roles, and we can see what's trending in different areas. So right away you see AWS is biggest, Silicon, California. Well, let's say, for example, what could be an interesting one? For front-end devs, we have React. Looks like in this 2-week period, they were just some ads, and they were basically Georgia and California. Or, for example, Python. Start to see what's going on with that. And some other things that you can check out. You can compare different skills and how they're demanded. So, for example, this right here is showing you that AWS is being asked for in 31% of job ads, whereas Azure in 16%, and Google Cloud in about 4%. And Azure is trending upward slowly, as we know. We know that this Azure and Google Cloud have been slowly, especially Azure, have been slowly taking a bite out of AWS, which is really the big one. We've got some more stuff here that you can also look at. Trending technologies. You can see what is most popular, what has changed. You can even filter by job roles. So, say a DevOps engineer. So far, our data is showing AWS, and surprisingly, Python is moving up. Java and Azure is fourth. And Azure just went up 3 places. So we know Azure, it's like everyone knows AWS, but a lot of job ads are asking for Azure. So that can be a skill that people can really differentiate themselves on and get some real kind of traction with. So thank you for your time. I was able to answer a few questions. Please send us any other questions if you have more, and we can try and get those answered for you as well. Be sure to check out the cloud catalog and play around with that data. And we appreciate you taking time to check out this data report. There's also a PDF of it on our website and an actual written version of this that you can check out as well. Thank you and have a good day.